The Book of Jubilees, Chapter 4. Now, before we get into the chapters, just make note that we're going to have line upon line, precept upon precept. So we have a couple books included in Chapter 4, which is the King James Version. And we have the Forgotten Books of Eden and the Book of Jasper also included in Chapter 4. And also make note that the daughters' names of Eve are not consistent in the Forgotten Books of Eden as well as in the Book of Jubilees. But what is consistent are the two daughters. So, and also not to mistake Cain's son Enoch with Jared's son Enoch from Seth generation. So, let's get started. Book of Jubilees, chapter 4. And in the third week, in the second Jubilee, she, Eve, gave birth to Cain. And in the fourth, she gave birth to Abel. And in the fifth, she gave birth to her daughter Awan. And in the first year of the third Jubilee, Cain slew Abel because Elohim Yahuwah accepted the sacrifice of Abel and did not accept the offering of Cain. And he slew him in the field, and his blood cried from the ground to heaven, complaining because he has slain him. And Yahuwah reproved Cain because of Abel, because he had slain him, and he had made him a fugitive on the earth because of the blood of his brother. And he cursed him upon the earth. And on this account it is written upon the heavenly tables, Cursed is he who smite his neighbors treacherously, and let him who have seen and heard say, So be it. Amen. And the man who has seen and not declared it, let him be accused as the other. And for this reason we announce when we come before Yahuwah our Eloah all the sin which is committed in heaven and on earth and in light and in darkness and everywhere. And Adam and his wife mourned for Abel for 4 weeks of years 99 through 127 a.m. and in the 4th year of the 5th week 1:30 a.m. They became joyful, and Adam knew his wife again. He had sex with her again. And she bare him a son, and he called his name Seth. For he says, Elohim Yahuwah has raised up a second seed unto us on the earth instead of Abel, for Cain slew him. And in the 6th 9 week, 134 through 40 a.m., he begat his daughter Azurah. And Cain took Awan his sister to be his wife, and she bare him Enoch at the close of the 4th Jubilee, which was 190 to 196 a.m. And in the first year of the first week of the 5th Jubilee at 197 a.m., houses were built on the earth, and Cain built a city and called its name after the name of his son Enoch. Now here's the Lost Book of Eden precept to that, chapter 74, the birth of Cain and Lulawa, why they received those names. Now see, again, in the Book of Jubilees, they said that Cain married Awan. So in the book of the Lost Forgotten Book of Eden, they call her Luala. So here's chapter 1 of verse 1 in chapter 74. And they lived on the earth, working in order to keep their bodies in good health, and they continued so until the 9th month of Eve's pregnancy were over, and the time drew near when she must give birth. Then she said to Adam, The signs placed in this cave since we left the garden indicate that this is a pure place, and we will be praying in it again sometime. It is not appropriate then that I should give birth in it. Let us instead go to the sheltering rock cave that was formed by the command of Elohim Yahuwah when Satan threw a big rock down on us and attempted to kill us in it. Adam then took Eve to that cave. When the time came for her to give birth, she strained a lot. Adam felt sorry, and he was very worried about her because she was close to death, and the words of Elohim Yahuwah to her were being fulfilled. In suffering shall you bear a child, and in sorrow shall you bring forth a child. But when Adam saw the distress in which Eve was, he got up and prayed to Elohim Yahuwah and said, O Yahuwah, look at me with the eyes of your mercy and bring her out of her distress. And Elohim Yahuwah looked at his handmaiden servant, Eve, and delivered her. And she gave birth to her firstborn son, and with him a daughter. And then Adam rejoiced at Eve's deliverance, and also over the children she had borne him. And Adam ministered to Eve in the cave until the end of 8 days, when they named the son Cain and the daughter Luluwa. The meaning of Cain is hater because he hated his sister in their mother's womb because they came out of it. Therefore, Adam named him Cain. But Luluwa means beautiful because she was more beautiful than her mother. Then Adam and Eve waited until Cain and his sister were 40 days old, and then Adam said to Eve, "We will make an offering and offer it up in behalf of the children." And Eve said, "We will make one offering for the firstborn son, and then later we shall make one for the daughter." Chapter 75 of the book of the Forgotten Books of Eden. The family revisited the cave of treasures, birth of Abel and Aquila. Then Adam prepared an offering, and he and Eve offered it up for their children and brought it to the altar that they had built at first. And Adam offered up the offering and asked Elohim Yahuwah to accept his offering. Then Elohim Yahuwah accepted Adam's offering and sent a light from heaven that shone upon the offering. And Adam and his son drew near to the offering, but Eve and the daughter did not approach it. Adam and his son were joyful as they came down on the altar, and Adam and Eve waited until the daughter was 8 days old. Then Adam prepared an offering and took it to Eve and to the children. They went to the altar where Adam offered it up, as he was accustomed, asking Yahuwah to accept his offering. And Yahuwah accepted the offering of Adam and Eve. Then Adam and Eve and the children drew near together and came down from the mountain rejoicing. But they returned not to the cave in which they were born, but came to the cave of treasures, in order that the children should go around in it and be blessed with the tokens brought from the garden. But after they had been blessed with these tokens, they went back into the cave in which they were born. However, before Eve had offered up the offering, Adam had taken her and had gone with her to the river of water in which they threw themselves at first, and there they washed themselves. Adam washed his body and Eve hers, also clean after the suffering and distress that had come over them. But Adam and Eve, after washing themselves in the river of water, returned every night to the cave of treasures where they prayed and were blessed, and then went back to their cave where their children were born. Adam and Eve did this until the children had been weaned. After they were weaned, Adam made an offering for the souls of his children in addition to the 3 times every week he made an offering for them. When the children were weaned, Eve again conceived. When her pregnancy came to term, she gave birth to another son and daughter. They named the son Abel and the daughter Aquila. Then after the end of 40 days, Adam made an offering for the son, and at the end of 80 days he made an offering for the daughter, and treated them as he had previously treated Cain and his daughter and his sister Luluwa. He brought them to the cave of treasures where they received a blessing, and then returned to the cave where they were born. After these children were born, Eve stopped having children. Now, Book 2 of the Forgotten Book of Eden, Chapter 1. The grief-stricken family, Cain marries Luluwa, his sister, and they move away. When Luluwa heard Cain's words, she wept and went to her, called her father and mother, and told them how that Cain had killed his brother Abel. Now, back in the book, I won't get too much into it. Cain really wanted to marry Aquila, and once he slew Abel, the sister saw him and then went back and told what had happened. Now, verse 2 of chapter 1 in the book 2. Then they all cried aloud and lifted up their voice and slapped their faces and threw dust upon their heads and went asunder their garments and went out and came to the place where Abel was killed. And they found him lying on the earth, killed, and beasts around him, while they wept and cried because of this just one. From his body, by reason of its purity, went forth the smell of sweet spices. And Adam carried him, his tears streaming down his face, and went to the cave of treasures, where he laid him, and wound up with sweet spices and myrrh. And Adam and Eve continually by the burial of him in great grief 140 days. Abel was 15.5 years old, and Cain 17 years and a half. As for Cain, when the mourning for his brother was ended, he took his sister Luluwa and married her, without leave from his father and mother, for they could not keep him from her, by reason of their heavy heart. He then went down to the bottom of the mountain away from the garden, near to the place where he had killed his brother. And in this place were many fruit trees and fig trees. His sister bare him children, who in their turn began to multiply by degrees until they filled that place. But as for Adam and Eve, they came not together after Abel's funeral for 7 years. After this, however, Eve conceived, and while she was with child, Adam said to her, "Come, let us take an offering and offer it up to Elohim Yahuwah, and ask him to give us a fair child in whom we may find comfort, in whom we may join in marriage to Abel's sister." Then they prepared an offering and brought it up to the altar and offered it to Yahuwah, and began to entreat him to accept their offering and to give them a good offspring. And Elohim Yahuwah heard Adam and accepted his offering. Then they worshipped Yahuwah, Adam and Eve and their daughter, and came down to the cave of treasures and placed a lamp in it to burn by night and day before the body of Abel. Then Adam and Eve continued fasting and praying until Eve's time came that should be delivered, when she said to Adam, "I wish to go to the cave in the rock to bring forth the child." And he said, "Go and take with thee thy daughter to wait on thee, but I will remain in the cave of treasures before the body of my son Abel." Then Eve hearkened to Adam and went, she and her daughter, but Adam remained by himself in the cave of treasures. Then, what does it say? The sign happened to Seth when he was 9 years old. Chapter 7. Seth marries Aquila. Adam lives to see grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Again, we're jumping around just to have line upon line, precept on precept about the marriage between Cain and his sister, and Seth and his sister, since Abel was killed. So chapter 7, verse 1, Seth marries Aquila. Adam lives to see grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Verse 1, when our father Adam saw that Seth was a perfect heart, he wished him to marry, lest the enemy should appear to him another time and overcome him. So Adam said to his son Seth, "I wish, O my son, that thou wed thy sister Aquila, Abel's sister, that she may bear thy children, whom shall replenish the earth according to Elohim's Yahuwah promises to us. Be not afraid, O my son, there is no disgrace in it. I wish thee to marry from fear lest thy enemy overcome thee." Seth, however, did not wish to marry, but in obedience to his father and mother, he said not a word. So Adam married him to Aquila, and he was 15 years old. But when he was 20 years of age, he begot a son whom he called Enoch, and then begot other children than him. Then Enoch grew up, married, and begot Canaan. Canaan also grew up and married and begot Mahalalel. Those fathers were born during Adam's lifetime and dwelt in the cave of treasures. Then were these days of Adam 930 years, and those of Mahalalel 100. But Mahalalel, when he was grown up, loved fasting, praying with hard labors until the end of our father Adam's days drew near. So that's the end of that precept. Now we're going into the precept of Genesis chapter 4, 9 through 18, about Cain and Abel and the death of his brother Abel, and who Cain married. So chapter 4, verse 9 through 18. And Yahuwah said unto Cain, "Where is Abel thy brother?" And Cain said to Yahuwah, "I know not. Am I my brother's keeper?" And he said, "What hast thou done? The voice of thy brother blood cried unto me from the ground. And now art thou cursed from the earth, which hath opened her mouth to receive thy brother's blood from thy hand. When thou tillest the ground, it shall not henceforth yield unto thee her strength. A fugitive and a vagabond shall thou be in the earth." And Cain said unto Yahuwah, "My punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, thou hast driven me out this day from the face of the earth, and from thy face shall I be hid, and I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond in the earth, and it shall come to pass that every one that findeth me shall slay me." And Yahuwah said unto him, "Therefore whosoever slayed Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold." And Yahuwah set a mark upon Cain, lest any finding him should kill him. And Cain went out from the presence of Yahuwah and dwelt in the land of Nod on the east of Eden. And Cain knew his wife, which again was his sister. And she conceived and bare Enoch. And don't confuse Cain's first son Enoch with Jared's son from Seth. And he built a city and called the name of the city after the name of his son Enoch. And Enoch was born Irad, and Irad begat Mahualel, and Mahual begat Methusalel, and Methusalel begat Lamech. So again, Cain's family names are so similar to Seth's family names, so don't get those two mixed up. Now here's a precept from the book of Asher, chapter 1, verse 32 to 36. Another of these different precepts are witnessing the events that took place. So here's verse 32 of chapter 1 in the book of Asher. And it shall be when thou shalt tilt it, this is Yahuwah talking to Cain. And it shall be when thou shalt till it, it shall no more give thee its strength as in the beginning. For thorns and thistles shall the ground produce, and thou shalt be moving and wandering in the earth until the day of thy death. And this is Yahuwah calling, kicking Cain out, and a wanderer and a vagabond, which moving from place to place, really no home, no land. So we know all those that's been wandering on this earth, that's going from place to place, city to city, just taking stuff. We know those are Cain's seeds. Now continuing. And at this time Cain went out from the presence of Yahuwah, from the place where he was, and he went moving and wandering in the land toward the east of Eden, he and all his belongings to him. And Cain knew his wife in those days, which is his sister, and she conceived and bare a son, and called his name Enoch. His wife was his sister, saying, in that time Yahuwah began to give him rest and quiet in the earth. And at that time Cain also began to build a city, and he built the city, and he called the name of the city Enoch, according to the name of his son. For in those days Yahuwah had given him rest upon the earth, and he did not move about and wander as in the beginning. And Irad born to Enoch, and Irad begat, I am bad with these names, Mahual, and Mahual begat Methusalel. Again, this Methusalel is not the same Methusalel with Jared and the other Enoch. So now we're going to continue to the book of Jubilees where we left off. And Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she bare yet 9 sons. Now I don't know about that number. And in the 5th week of the 5th Jubilee, from 2:25 to 31 a.m., excuse me, Seth took Azurah, his sister, to be his wife. See, again, these names are not consistent, because in the other book they said her name was Aquila, and in the book of Jubilees they call her name Azurah. But the consistency is the daughters of Eve married their brothers. So let's continue. Seth took Azurah, his sister, to be his wife, and in the 4th year of the 6th, 12 to 13 week, in 2:35 a.m., she bare him Enos. He began to call on the name of Yahuwah on the earth. And in the 7th Jubilee, in the 3rd week, 3:09 to 15 a.m., Enos took Noam, his sister, to be his wife. And she bare him a son in the 3rd year of the 5th week, and he called his name Canaan. And at the close of the 8th Jubilee, from 3:25 and 3:86 to 3:992 a.m., Canaan took Mahulalel, these names are terrible. I'm going to spell it. Mualeleleth, his sister, to be his wife. And she bare him a son in the 9th Jubilee, and in the 1st week in the 3rd year of this week, 9:35 a.m., and he called his name Mahalalel. And in the 2nd week of the 10th Jubilee, from 4:49 through 55 a.m., Mahalalel took unto him to wife Dinah, the daughter of Barachio, the daughter of his father, brother, and she bare him a son in the 3rd week in the 6th year, 46:1 a.m., and he called his name Jared. For in his days the angels of Yahuwah descended on earth, those who are named the watchers, that they should instruct the children of men, and that they should do judgment and uprightness on the earth. And in the 11th Jubilee at 5:12 through 18 a.m., Jared took to himself a wife, and her name was Baraka, the daughter of Rasujo, a daughter of his father's brother, in the 4th week of this Jubilee, 5:22 a.m. And she bare him a son in the 5th week, and in the 4th year of the Jubilee, and 17, verse 17, he called his name Enoch. And he was the first among men that are born on the earth, who learnt writing and knowledge and wisdom, and who wrote down the signs of heaven according to the order of their months in the book, that men might know the seasons of the years according to order of their separate months. So again, we see these names are so similar. So now we're on Seth's side of the family when they're talking about Baraka, the daughter, Razujal, the daughter, father, and now we're talking about Mahalalel and Jared, because we know Methuselah was Jared's father, who fathered Enoch. So we're going to get some consistency with these names. So we also know these books been translated on translation. So we have to sift through and just look at truth here on the events. So some of the names may be, twisted and turned, but we know the story is consistent with the people and what's had taken place. So let's get into verse 19. And he was the first to write a testimony, and we're talking about Enoch, and he testified to the sons of men among the generations of the earth, and recounted the weeks of jubilees, and had made known to them the days of the years, and set in order the months, and recounted the Sabbaths of the years as we made them known to him. And what was and what will be he saw in a vision of his sleep, as it will happen to the children of men throughout their generations until the day of judgment. And we're talking about Enoch having a dream of what was happening in the book of Enoch. And he saw and understood everything. We're talking about Enoch, and wrote his testimony, and placed the testimony on earth for all the children of men and for their generations. And in the 12th Jubilee at 582 to 88, in the 7th week thereof, he took to himself a wife, and her name was Edna, the daughter of Daniel, the daughter of his father's brother. And in the 6th year, in this week, 587 a.m., she bare him a son, and called his name Methuselah. And he was moreover with the angels of Elohim, Methuselah was, the 6th Jubilee of years, and they showed him everything which is on earth and in heaven, and ruled of the sun, and he wrote down everything. And he testified to the watchers who had sinned with the daughters of men, for these had begun to unite themselves so as to be defiled with the daughters of men. And Enoch testified against them all. And he was taken from amongst the children of men, and we conducted him into the Garden of Eden in majesty and honor. And behold, there he writes down the condemnation and judgment of the world, and all the wickedness of the children of men. So here we see, appears that the angels, the good ones, they place Enoch in the Garden of Eden while he was writing the book of Enoch on what all these watchers, these fallen angels, had begun to come down and have sex with the daughters of women to produce these giants, these Nephilim. Now let's continue. And on account of it, Elohim Yahuwah brought the water of the flood upon all the land of Eden. For there he was set a sign, and that he should testify against all the children of men, that he should recount all the deeds of the generations until the day of condemnation. And he burnt the incense of the sanctuary, even sweet spices acceptable before Yahuwah on the mount. For Yahuwah has 4 places on the earth, the Garden of Eden, and the Mount of the East, and this mountain of which thou art this day, Mount Sinai, and Mount Zion, which will be sanctified in the new creation for a sanctification of the earth, though it will though it will the earth be sanctified from all its guilt and its uncleanliness throughout the generations of the world. And in the 14th Jubilee, 6:52 a.m., Methuselah took unto himself a wife, Edna, the daughter of Azarel, Azarel, the daughter of his father's brother, in the third week, in the first year of this week, 7:01 through 7 a.m., and he begat a son and called his name Lamech. And in the 15th Jubilee, in the third week, Lamech took to himself a wife, and her name was Bethnos, the daughter of Barachiel, the daughter of his father's brother. And in the week she bare him a son, and called his name Noah, saying, This one will comfort me for my trouble, all my work, and for the ground which Yahuwah had cursed. And at the close of the 19th Jubilee, in the seventh week, in the sixth year, 9:30 a.m. thereof, Adam died, and all his sons buried him in the land of his creation, and he was the first to be buried in the earth. And he lacked 70 years of 1,000 years. 1,070 years, for 1,000 years, or as one day in testimony of the heavens. Therefore was it written concerning the tree of knowledge, On the day that ye eat thereof shall die. For this reason he did not complete the years of this day, for he died during it. And the close of this jubilee, Cain was killed after him in the same year, for his house fell upon him, and he died in the midst of his house, and he was killed by its stones. For with a stone he had killed Abel, and by a stone was he killed in righteous judgment. For this reason it was ordained on the heavenly tables, with the instrument with which a man kills his neighbor, with the same shall he be killed. After the manner that he wounded him, in like manner shall they deal with him. And in the 25th, 12:05 a.m. Jubilee, Noah took to himself a wife, and her name was Zara, the daughter of Rachel, the daughter of his father's brother, in the first year, in the fifth week, 12:07 a.m. And in the third year thereof she bare him Shem. In the fifth year thereof, 12:09 a.m., she bare him Ham. And in the first year, in the sixth week, 12:12 a.m., she bare him Japheth. And that's the end of chapter 4 of the book of Jubilee.